welcome, guys. Welcome to our 11th monthly meeting of the UK MTB Trail Alliance. We're going to kick things off with a quick cameo appearance from Dom Ferris, who will talk to us briefly about Trashby Trails' autumn trail cleans. I'll then hand over to Henry, Norman, Jasmin Patel, Emma Peasland and Manon Carpenter, who will cover the main outcomes from this year's Reframing MTB conference, share and discuss ideas, challenges encountered and progress made over the summer, and outline upcoming plans for Reframing MTB in 2025, which we're all very excited about. So after a Q&A session with the Reframing team, we'll then open it up to a wider discussion, perhaps including what should be the agenda for next year's Reframing, what the UK MTB Trail Alliance could be doing in collaboration with Reframing, and whatever else people like to talk about. So before I start, just a bit of housekeeping. If you've got questions, please use the little hands up icon at the bottom of the screen, so I know you want to speak. And I'll call people in turn. When asking a question, say who you are and what group you're from. That's really important, because obviously we don't all know each other in this call. It's good to know who people are when they're talking. And could I ask that you all leave your video on during the call so everyone can see each other, but remain muted unless you're speaking. And then also, just lastly, please change your display name to include the org you represent. So, for example, you can see mine is Robin Grant, UK MTB Trail Alliance. Just so everyone knows who each other are. So, having said that, I will hand over to Dom.
Thanks, Robin. Hello, everyone. It's nice to see some familiar faces and obviously some new people. How many people are on the call, Robin? I can't quite find that.
There are 17 of us currently.
Oh, cool. Okay, well, so that's, for me, in my mind, I know I'm talking to 17 trail communities there. I know that with at least 17 individual trail locations being represented. So straight away, I'm like, right, okay, what an incredible audience that, for our mission. And obviously, how many people are on the Alliance in total?
That's a good question. So I think we're up to about 100. The official total is over 130 informal trail groups, trail associations, and bike parks. But in reality, we're probably quite a bit more than that. I stopped once I got 130 that said yes. I stopped asking the question because it was time consuming getting them to sign off.
Right. Cool. Well, okay. Yeah. Well, so for me, a quick recap on Trash-Free Trails, because I haven't spoken to a lot of people before and I haven't spoken for a little while to anyone. So really, for us, we're for riders, runners, and roamers alike. Everyone's welcome, and our aim is pretty simple. Our mission is pretty simple, really. It's to reconnect people with nature through the simple, yet meaningful act of removing single-use pollution from the places we love. I think for me, I always feel like I have to revisit this, is I actually honestly believe we can create a lasting reduction in the amount of single-use pollution on our trails. And I think we can, actually the key to that, and I think we can do it, is we can create a causatory increase in a sense of connection and care that people who visit those places. Those two are linked inexorably, but really our focus on the reduction for this period is that, I asked you if I could speak about the autumn trail cleans, but really it would feel remiss if I didn't talk directly at the Trail Association and say, I think if we are to create that reduction, if we can do it, it's going to be the Trail Association linked trails that it happens on first, in my opinion. I think it's going to be places that have your trails that are going to be the ones that will happen on first, if it can happen, because you're the people who have stepped up, and each of those trails is fully represented and cared for. The evidence is here on this call on a Monday night at 8 o'clock. So, and I know there's a million other things that you think about when you're thinking about how you care for your trails and your communities, and that trail trash is just one of those. But I'm here really standing in front of you or sitting in front of you, asking you to whether you might be able to help with our mission to create that reduction, in the belief that it will support your work as well, I think, because again, cleaner trails are happier trails. Cleaner trails are healthier trails, both ecologically and from a community point of view. So really the first one is, if even kind of, 30% of the 135 trail centres, trail associations really take this on board and really begin to engage with Trash-Free Trails work, that's an incredible resource for us. So the first one is, I'm just asking whether people would be willing to join in with our autumn trail clean that's taking place right now. And again, sometimes people wonder what we mean by that. And actually, the autumn trail cleans is the simplest thing for us. It's head out in on your own or in a group, or even organize an event. It's a little bit short notice now, and just grab any of the single-use pollution that you can see with the time that you've got. Then head to our website and report your data. And we've got a new form now that takes less than a minute to fill out to give us really meaningful data. It takes less than a minute. It's a series of buttons, and essentially you say, I removed an amount of trash that's equivalent to a carrier bag or a bread bag or a pocketful or a handful or a bin bag if you had a massive job. So by doing that, you're submitting data to us that we can use then to create targeted evidence-led preventative action, which actually is what 2025 is going to be about for us. It's going to be about getting ahead of the problem, which again is what we hope trail associations might be keen to kind of really help us lead from the front on, is that yes, I'll always be cleaning trails. I'll always be picking the trash up I see, but I'm not doing that with the belief that that's the only way I'm going to solve the problem. We want to get ahead of the problem next year. We want to prevent it. We want to prevent littering behaviour. And again, one of the ways we can do that is by creating evidence-led, science-led behavioural interventions. So, for example, you arrive at a trail association trail, and you've worked with us. We've worked together to install really nice signage infrastructure that uses things like social norming and nudge theory to actually provide signs and signage that has been proven to change behaviour, not just to tell people that they're going to get shot or they're a tosser if they drop it. So again, if you're, we're going to be trialing that with our A team next year, with our ambassadors and our community hubs. But if you're anyone in the trail in your association and your collective, Robin, would like to help us trial those prevention infrastructure measures, then please come to us. That would be amazing. Or I probably used up my 5 minutes and spoken way more than I wanted to already. But essentially, the bottom line is we're looking to keep it simple. We're looking to go back to what we started off next year is just getting our hands dirty by removing the trash. But then by submitting the data and then taking those little extra steps to try to get ahead of the problem, we think we can create trash-free trails, and we'd be really grateful for your support. So there we go. I'll stop my 8 o'clock ramble.
Awesome, thank you, Dom. Henry, are you good to go? Henry keeps appearing and disappearing. Possibly. And tell us a no. Is anyone, while we've got Dom, has anyone got any questions either about Awesome Trail Cleans or anything else that Trash-Free Trails does? Meanwhile, Henry, shout once you're ready. I've got a question. So, like in practical terms, if people want to run an Awesome Trail Clean, what do they do?
Yeah, well, it's really simple. Obviously, if you want to organise an event, well, whether you want to organise an event or just go out on your own, we have all of our projects have what we call a DIO toolkit, so a do-it-ourselves toolkit on our webpage, on our website. So you go onto the land on the homepage. First thing you'll see is how to join in button. Press the join in button and go on there, and that'll give you the steps then to organise what we call a safe, effective, and enjoyable trail clean. And that's got different scales. And then once you've done that, it's also then got guidance on how to collect the data and submit the data. But the cool thing is right now we're trialing this really simple thing. So if you collect a pocketful or a handful and you go on the website, it'll ask you, were there bottles in what you found? Did you see any animal chew marks or animal interaction on the bottles? What type of trail did you collect it from? And because we've had over almost 1,000 different data sets submitted now over the last 4 years, we can use that then because that's super detailed to kind of turn your data into something that's even more impactful. So, for example, we know but the fact that I've hand counted about 10 or 15 carrier bags full of trash, we know how many items on average fit into a carrier bag. So we, again, now that's why we've been able to simplify the data collection.
Cool. Sam and Kat, you had a question for Don?
Yeah, hi Don. I was quite interested by you mentioning about signage infrastructure with impacted behaviours. I was wondering if you could delve in a little bit more into what's this signage, and how do you kind of impact those kind of human behaviours?
Oh yeah, I try not to be I try not to spend too long talking about this, because I've actually got like a set of you won't be able to see any of the detail, but you can see these. You can see these on the screen. These are all my draft versions of the signs we're exploring next year, and they get increasingly more nuanced, I suppose. But the bottom line is that obviously, well, in my opinion, and based on the research we've done, is that a lot of anti-litter signage, it doesn't work, and some of it has been shown to actually be counterproductive. There's a really incredible study that I'd point you towards, done by the behavior change in Cornwall. What is it called? Here it is. The behavior change Cornwall, and there's a report there, peer reviewed, called "Can We Nudge People to Recycle?" And it's really cool. They did a study, and they put 7 different signs up around Loo in Cornwall, and 7 different kind of signs that were aimed at reducing littering behaviour. And it's just wonderful, the results. Little nuances, by saying 1 in 10 people litter, that increased littering. By saying 9 out of 10 people take their litter home, that reduced littering. So there's these little simple touches you can put in, but really it all goes back to it all links back to our one of our values. Our main values is that we will always be positive, and we'll never use blame, shame, guilt, or aggression as a tactic. So it links a lot to that for us, is that we want people to come to these places, and through having positive experiences, either through the signs they interact with, the people they see, the people who work there, the cleanliness of the place, that increases their sense of connection and care for these places, and reduces litter. Because again, really, if you put a sign saying you're being watched, or you're going to get fined, or you're going to get threatened, what happens when no one's watching people? That's not, our intention is not. Our intention is to create people who can look after themselves and the places they visit.
Yeah. So are you going to make those signage kind of like available to kind of purchase through your website, or through like your kind of do-it-yourself toolkit?
Yeah, yes, we are. Yes, and we're starting that with our ambassador team in January next year, with the launch of a really nice new program called essentially These Are My Trails. I don't know that whether you work at Dovey, but you got the Dovey. Yeah. So we're hoping, for example, athletes such as those who might ride at Dovey, should we say, might be some of the faces of that as well. And that will start with that, and then really simple. Our way markers. Yeah. So we're going to start with a refresh and renewal of our way markers, and each of the ambassador team are also going to have a nice little sign to go at their trailhead or near their trailhead. And again, that's going to, we're going to be really mindful of how we design that, what it says, how it says it. Yeah, and hopefully that goes well, and then people like yourself go, "Oh, what are those? We'd like to do them," and then we can go from there.
Awesome, looking forward to seeing that. Thank you.
Cool, thanks, guys. I think Henry is now ready, so I'll hand over to Henry from Ride Sheffield and Reframing MTB.
Hi, yeah, cheers for that, Robin. So, sorry, I just got slightly way with the slideshow to turn up. So, yeah, hi, I'm Henry. I'm from I've been in the Trail Association world for a while. I actually started off with Redlands Trails down in Surrey, and now kind of involved, one of the founders of Ride Sheffield. I'm also part of PE's Steel City Downhill. And to kind of round it off, I also work for Sustrans as my day job. So in terms of kind of how reframing came around, Ride Sheffield has always been about access. And I guess what we were always trying to do is open up spaces for people. But what we started to realise was actually access goes both ways. So what we wanted to be doing was also just, making those spaces accessible for all sorts of people. So actually making that space a safe place to be. So I'll kind of go through in this introduction just about how Reframing came into being, really. So Reframing is an organisation that's aimed at making mountain biking a better and more inclusive and sustainable fun space for all. So I'm going to talk about how that came about. I'm also going to chat briefly about why that's important too. And then the rest of the team are going to take you through how the event went this year and what our plans are for 2025 and beyond. So initially, this conversation about reframing, or the ideas sort of pre-reframing, came about with conversations with a few people. So just sort of chats online through DMs and things like that. So chatting with like Guy Kesterman and Chris Hall and Sid Maney about just when you'd see like things going online, or you'd see things going on Instagram, and it just kind of made you go, oh, I just thought mountain biking was better than that, or we could do things in a better way. And we kind of kicked around ideas, and we'd planned to go out for a ride, and we just never found the time to actually get everybody together and have a ride and a conversation. But that was kind of the sowing of the initial seeds. So kind of that was 2021. In 2022, we were at an event that was hosted by Trash Free Trails. So and Manon hosted a chat called, I think it was called Reframing Mountain Biking, and this was based on some of her learnings from an IMBA Europe conference. And again, within that conversation, it became really apparent that, you know, it wasn't just a few people who were having these thoughts about how mountain biking currently was in isolation. It was actually loads and loads and loads of different people who also were starting to sort of see things in the same way. So we decided it was probably a good idea to do stuff. So Manon and I put a plan together. So it was an invite-only event. So that was bringing together sort of the industry and the media, underrepresented groups in mountain biking and trail associations, as well as land managers and other cycling groups as well. It was also kind of at this point that Anila McKenna joined the team too. So initially it was just Manon, Anila and myself. And what we found is there's a lot of sort of intersection and crossover between people who were attending the events. So trail associations, for example, make an example relevant for you guys. So trail associations really benefited from conversations with media and industry, because it actually gave us a platform to hold those conversations, to explain that what we actually needed was financial support from the industry. It also gave us a chance to explain about why it was important that trail associations need to be better represented in the media, that were sort of a bit of a side note, a bit boring, maybe not quite as, you know, the main story, whereas actually we were a vital part of mountain biking, particularly in this country. But also trail association benefited from having conversations with other people. So from a diversity and inclusion perspective, it gave us an understanding of how we could actually get more people to our trail days, get more people involved in riding and things like that. So in November 2022, we had our first event. So we had 35 people who came along to an event in Sheffield. That was 35 was actually from an invite only. We kind of word of mouth spread, and we started getting a lot of requests. So we actually ended up with a bit of a waiting list, which was always a nice position to be in. So we had a bit of a ride in the morning, a bit of pizza for lunch, and then we had some really, really interesting conversations, presentations from land managers and trail associations and the media and underrepresented groups within the sport. And it was just really nice. It was a really nice atmosphere. It was quite eye-opening for some people, but it was really nice to feel like we had sort of momentum, that people wanted to do more. But it turned out we needed a bit more time, and we needed perhaps a slightly bigger room too. So 2025, March this year, we had Reframing number 2. So I'm not going to tell you too much about this at this point, because this is what the other guys are going to fill you in on. But yeah, we got a bigger room. We had more time. So this was hosted over a couple of days. We now have a much bigger team. So we have Julia Hobson, Emma Peasland, Jasmin Patel as well on board, and a bigger scope as well. So we actually, one of the things we kind of, we feels like a really important part of it, and I don't know why we didn't have it to begin with, but also environment. So, and we also have a website and Instagram, so you can find us in those places too. So again, just that's where we are right now, but I think it's important to touch on why it's important. So mountain biking, like wider society, works better for some people than others, is probably the easiest, succinctest way to put it. So for some of us, we're in a position of privilege. And when you're in a position of privilege, it's really, really hard to see why other people don't get what you get, or don't see the world how you see it, or don't get the treatment that you get. So sometimes it's a bit hard to kind of think, oh, actually, we need to do something to make it easier. My experience of mountain biking is all positive. It's all lovely. I get riding with my friends. This is how it is. But that's not an experience that everyone else has. So it's quite a shift to change how you think. And sometimes people are a bit nervous about change. Mountain biking looks a certain way, it has a certain audience, and some people are comfy with that, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't change it to make it more accessible for other people, because ultimately mountain biking is awesome. And, you know, it's probably everyone in this conversation's favorite thing to do. And you probably spend loads of time chatting to your friends and neighbors and family going, you should come mountain biking with me. You should do this. It's awesome. You should join us. So, you know, what we need to do is actually just spread that out and open up the trails for everybody. So this is kind of a bigger conversation to be had, but it's really important to understand that we can use our positions and privilege and connections to be able to take a more honest look at mountain biking and understand we can change and improve it and make it more open and more inclusive and a safer space for all. So making mountain biking a better space isn't just about going to benefit someone with protected characteristics. And I think this is a good way of looking at things. I've read things which talk about how, from an environmental perspective, if we decide to decarbonize and make all these changes and do all these things, and it turns out that, you know, we're wrong, we won't have made the world a worse place. And I think it's a good way of thinking about, you know, what changes we make to mountain biking. All of these things are going to benefit everybody. So even if you're not a person of color, or, you know, you're not someone who's new to it, or you're not a person who's taken up mountain biking post-retirement, all of those changes will just make it a more comfortable space for everybody. And like I say, it's a really big and broad conversation, and perhaps this sort of breadth of conversation is something to maybe revisit another time, and maybe dedicate something to another of these calls to some of these topics. But now I'll just hand you back to, I think, who's coming up next, Manon?
Sorry, just finding myself to unmute. I'll just show, if I can get back to my screen. There you go. Jasmin and Emma are going to talk through the first of the workshops, but part of the day on the Friday, we have speakers in the morning to kind of set the scene on some of the different topics that Henry's talked about. And then we broke into workshops to discuss different aspects of mountain biking and what we can do, having a whole range of people from mountain biking sector, from volunteers, riders, through to land managers were there, and brands and media. So having a really broad attendance from across mountain biking, having these conversations and seeing what we can do to improve mountain biking and make it a better place to be in general. So the three main workshops we looked at: trails and associations. So how do we grow support for trails and associations? Getting that support both from riders and also the mountain bike industry, and also have people coming along to trail associations as well. And are they welcoming for everyone? I think we know, I'll go into this later, but how do we bring more different people in as well? Diversity and inclusion. So why aren't some people mountain biking, and what can we do about it? As Henry said, why might it not be appealing to some people, and how can we change that? And then the media and industry, looking at, I think they had quite a broad discussion in this workshop, but looking at how the expertise that the media and industry have in storytelling and getting messages across to riders, how can they use that expertise and knowledge to help facilitate and amplify positive messages around mountain biking. So I'm going to hand over first of all to Jasmin and Emma, who will go through the diversity and inclusion workshop outcomes.
Thank you, Manon. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Grand. Okay, so I'll introduce myself. I'm Jasmin Patel. I am one of the founding members of the group Colour Collective, along with Anila and a few others. And Colour Collective is a group that is focused on celebrating and increasing the participation of people from diverse ethnic backgrounds within mountain biking. And we're UK focused, but we're spread all over the country. So I got roped in, I think, quite late notice and on crutches to help with reframing mountain biking this year. and to help run the diversity and inclusion workshop. So we had about 20 people in the workshop. Myself and Henry did the facilitation, and Emma brilliantly recorded it. And it was like an open space in which we could discuss diversity and inclusion in mountain biking in the broader sense. And the conversation we had was driven by the interests of the people that were there. So we began with Henry again, sharing some thoughts around interpretations of access and mountain biking and how they've moved along in recent years, from just thinking about land and trails to more thinking about access in terms of people. So back to the question that Manon just put out, who can or can't access mountain biking and why? And then what can we do about it as mountain bikers? I then shared my own personal experience of getting into mountain biking. So I got into it maybe quite late, like aged about 30, possibly a midlife crisis, I don't know. And also got involved with Colour Collective as part of that. The discussion was driven with the loose aim of identifying potential solutions to issues that could be shared as suggestions and recommendations for groups and organisations involved in mountain biking to consider that they could adopt to make mountain biking more inclusive. So I'm going to just hand over to Emma now to run through the recommendations in a bit more detail than is written here, because she did the brilliant note-taking. So Emma, are you there?
Yeah, thanks, Jasmin. Yeah.
Hi.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm Emma Peasland. I suppose in terms of introducing myself, my best affiliation now would probably be Reframing Mountain Biking, although I'm based in Sheffield, and so I sometimes have done some stuff over the past few years with Ride Sheffield, and I previously worked for Sustrans, so I've been in and around cycling and mountain biking for a while. But yeah, so after we had a really kind of open discussion, like Jasmin has described, and as well as kind of recording a little bit of everything that people discussed, we then moved towards trying to identify some potential like actions or recommendations to come out of that discussion. And it, like we say, it was a diverse discussion with diverse people. So just to run through these briefly, and the kind of headlines are up there on the slide that Manon shared. The first one was to explicitly message who is welcome when an opportunity such as a trail day or a ride or something like that is advertised or shared. So this is some of the kind of underpinning for this recommendation was thinking about the fact that mountain biking can happen in some quite remote locations, and some people might feel like potentially a little bit vulnerable turning up to an event particularly if they didn't know anyone. So it's valuable in terms of opening mountain biking up to diverse people and groups to signpost whether an opportunity is a safe space for people. So this could be because of things like factors including gender identity, or it could be if it's a ride, like what kind of pace are people riding at, how technical is it, and that kind of thing. And just being really explicit about what people can expect will help people to decide whether this is an opportunity that feels safe and welcoming. The second recommendation was to meet people where they are. Kind of the underpinning for this was thinking about how sometimes mountain biking is portrayed as something that happens like out there in wild and dramatic landscapes, and that could be a barrier for people realizing, or to people realizing, that there might be opportunities almost on their doorsteps. So I'm based in Sheffield. We're lucky enough to have city centre trail as well as kind of trails right on the edge of the city as well. So by kind of portraying mountain biking in kind of the diverse settings in which it can happen, and investing in sharing knowledge about local opportunities and including those kind of urban facilities might help to people to realise that mountain biking could happen perhaps where they are already. And this was also thinking, I've talked a lot about that in terms of location, but actually it might also kind of be considered in terms of equipment. So does mountain biking have to happen on high-end full suspension bikes, or are there other kind of visions of equipment that we might be able to meet people where they're at in terms of being welcoming to join in, basically. The third recommendation was in terms of when portraying mountain biking, to highlight or show the diversity of mountain bikers and mountain biking. So I talked about equipment just now, but also it might be in terms of people, it might be in terms of the different disciplines within mountain biking. And so I guess there's something for media and industry to do in that space, but also perhaps, you know, trail associations, kind of advertising opportunities, kind of thing too. And then finally, the last one was to consider intersections in terms of participant demographics. So if by opening up an opportunity for one particular group, for example, are you accidentally or inadvertently kind of closing that opportunity to another group that you might want to interact with or attract to an opportunity? So that's a kind of more of a kind of a consideration piece in terms of planning and communicating opportunities and that kind of thing. So yeah, those were the four kind of recommendations or thought points that came out of that diversity and inclusion workshop. And I'm not sure which workshop's up next, but I think I'm handing back to you, Manon.
Yes, thanks, Emma and Jasmin. And I should just mention, I'll show the link at the end of this talk, where we're kind of summarizing the outcomes, and there is a report as well where you can read, and there's a bit more text on each of these recommendations from each of the workshops that you can also read and look through in your own time. So going on to Trails and Associations workshop, this was part led by Robin Grant on the call and Kath Goody from Trail Collective North Wales, and also a mountain bike guide, and myself, I was recording it. And we broke it into two parts. So the first part, led by Robin, was how do we grow support for trails and associations? And not included in these 4 points, we did have a discussion also on funding for trail associations, and also the mountain bike industry supporting with time as well as funding. And you can look on the Trail Hub, at the top of the Trail Hub, there's a really great article on funding for trail associations. So that isn't in this bit. But yeah, we were also talking about trail associations needing funding, but also time. So can, for example, mountain bike industry, local businesses also give a day to trail associations to give back in that way. So aside from those 2 points, we have these 4 points for part 1. And this was mostly to bring people from the local community into trail associations and to keep them coming back. And again, we had a number of different trail associations in the room from Scotland, England, and Wales. And also some land managers and people who engage with trail associations, for example, land managers through their work. And we talked about how it's really important to credit volunteers from like a land management perspective, you know, really to value the time the volunteers put in and make sure that that is absolutely recognised. And also for within trail associations to recognise that often, I think probably we'll recognise on the call, there's a core group, and it's important to appreciate the time that people put in. And also if you're trying to recruit more people into the trail association, to be clear on the time commitment you might expect from them and giving clear roles. And of course, within that discussion, recognizing that it's never perfect, and trail associations are people doing the best they can with the time that they've got. So trying to be clear to people coming in what might be expected of them, but also recognizing that there's always some kind of working with what you've got and the time that you've got. And also about building awareness in the community. So wherever we're able to reach out to the community to kind of show what we're doing, and connecting. There was conversation around connecting trail fairies to people wherever possible. So I think it's become quite a common term. Trail fairies have done work on the trails, but actually those trail fairies are people. So where you're able to, where agreements are in place and you're able to say, these are the people who are looking after your trails, making that clear and really putting those faces and those people to the name of the trail fairies who are looking after trails, so people really do recognize the effort that's put in. And then there's also things that can be done in terms of holding socials through trail associations, so kind of building that community spirit and bringing people in and who might not know how it works or what the trail association is, and they might come along and be curious. So North Cardiff Trails, which is what I've been involved with from the last few years. We've held some social rides this year, and they've been really great for bringing people in who might not have known about what Cardiff Trails was trying to do, and now they're really interested about what's going on. And a few more people are now coming into the core group, perhaps, to also come and get involved that way. And social media, putting the word out, this is what we're doing, please support us, whichever way people can, time, donations, etc. Knowledge sharing between organisations. I think, again, this is what the Trail Hub is really great for. Like, now there's really that platform to talk with other groups and ask what they're doing. So I say trail associations loosely, from the really organised formal groups that have agreements in place to the more kind of emerging trail groups that aren't at that point. Being able to have conversations with other groups is really important to share that knowledge. So that's both online, but also where you can, talking with other people in person, meeting up for a ride. Seeing quite a lot of this now in South Wales. Different groups like Risker Riders have come along to the North Cardiff Trails Days and Cumcan, and it's really nice to kind of, for people to be able to talk to other groups to see how they're getting on. And yes, and then so from the Trail and Dig Days, this is, touch on this a little bit on the next slide as well from part 2. But if you're inviting new people to come to a dig day, maintenance day, having a clear structure in place and an onboarding process, also for people coming into the Trail Association, explaining what it is that's the aim for the day, what roles people can do, so that people feel like they have a part to play and might not feel lost, or maybe perhaps not want to come back because they haven't felt confident the first time. And I've also been involved in organising a dig day where I think we probably were guilty of this. I think sometimes it's easy to assume that people would know what to do, but there was recognition at Reframing this year that a big part of holding dig days, it's kind of outreach as well. It's bringing people in, showing what's going on, connecting with the community. And if you are saying you want everyone to come along of any experience, then you need to be ready to accommodate them and make sure that they leave feeling good about the day and that they've been able to contribute and that they've had a good time. Because I think we'll, it can be really fun. So like helping people have a task they can really get stuck into and enjoy themselves is going to get them coming back another time. So yeah, and just that structure as well. If you're at a stage where you can have clear roles in a trail group, trail association, I think that really helps, again, people to know the part that they play and be able to contribute. So part 2, this part was, so thinking about, in the context of reframing, how welcoming are trail associations, or how do we get more people coming in who might not be in this space already? And I've been in kind of trail advocacy discussions for the last few years, and think we probably all recognize there's quite a specific demographic, or we're missing a lot of people from trail associations. So there's definitely groups that have women involved, but it would be great to see even more involved, just as much as I'd love to see more women out on trails. Also getting us into the trail advocacy space, coming on dig days, would be really great to see. So, and that's kind of on the women's side, but also as from the diversity and inclusion workshop, that's a whole other step you know, how can we get a broader representation of the societies we live in to come in and get involved. But there's things to do to help that happen. So here are 10, lots of words, I'm sorry. I'll pick out on some of the main ones. And again, this is in the report on the website. But a lot of this communication is really important. So using imagery and language on websites and social media or on event pages. Use imagery and language that represents the people you want to reach, but you also need to be honest. So again, if you're inviting beginners along, be ready to also look after them on the day. So be clear on who you're inviting along and be ready for that. And also, if you can display an inclusive ethos and values, that's going to make people feel more confident to turn up if they don't know anyone else who's there, if they feel like it looks like the right kind of environment that they'd like to get involved with, that's going to really help them actually turn up on the day. I already talked about supporting newcomers with roles they can do to keep them coming back. And I'm going to get a pointer. Okay. And we had Fee from Aberdeenshire Trail Association. She came and spoke at Reframing, and she gave a really good talk, and she's been involved with Aberdeenshire Trail Association for many years now, I'd say, and they've really managed to create a really amazing atmosphere, to be honest, and environments, and they have lots of women coming along to days, but they've done a few different things to help that. So they've held some women-only dig days. That helps having Fee and Jan leading the way with this, but that's helped introduce less confident people to come along. And they've also held things like evening digs and midweek digs. So if people have different childcare, family commitments, etc., or you know, a different working schedule, they found the evening and midweek digs also work really well. Invite underrepresented community groups to join a dig day. This is something we'd like to do in Cardiff. There's a group called School of Rocks, which is like a women's riding community. And when the agreement's in place to have official public dig days, it'd be really great to get them along. And they're really keen to do that as well. And then, you know, of course, the more diverse riding communities we have, the more diverse volunteers hopefully will feed into trail associations. So again, inviting people on where we can, where there's community groups that we might be able to say reach out to and say, do you want to come and get involved? These are all ways we can think about inviting more different people into trail associations. And there's things like, you know, where resources allow. We recognise this depending where you are in the country. If you've got the trails there to help beginners come on. Again, North Cardiff Trails held social rides this year, and we had easy rides and hard rides. Turns out the easy ride still wasn't quite easy enough. So it does depend what's available. And then this idea of giving people the opportunity to lead. Sometimes I think, giving people the opportunity to organise something, take on a piece of work themselves within a trail association. In all organisations that I've seen, you know, if you give people the space to take initiative on something, I think it normally turns out pretty well. It's worth the risk, I think, to give that a go. And then, yeah, this idea, people will come along ultimately because it's fun, and the more that team and community spirit can be involved to make people feel like they're really part of something and giving back is really important. To have this idea of sustainable trail associations, you know, that have enough of a base of people to keep it going in the long term, which I think is something we're working out because there's so much time and effort that goes into it. So how to make them sustainable spaces and organisations in the long term. The last workshop, I'm not going to spend loads of time on. I think we wanted to at least talk for the hour. So maybe I'll hand over to you soon, Henry, for the outdoors day. But so in the media and industry, we was talking about the storytelling. We had a range of speakers talking on how to drive social change. And also Lauren from Tactile Winters talking about challenge of climate change and what outdoor communities that really depend on outdoor spaces that are vulnerable to environmental challenges, what we can also be doing to progress the conversation and get people more on board with taking action to address climate. Challenges around climate, and which Emma touched on in the diversity and inclusion. This idea of sharing more diverse stories, and that mountain biking, for a lot of people, we do it because it's fun and because it's an adventure and because there's a social side to it. And you don't always see that in marketing and imagery. Kind of Henry touched on as well. Sometimes the more kind of adrenaline fueled or extreme side can be off-putting to lots of people. And the amount of times I hear in my day-to-day life from non-mountain bikers, oh, it's too dangerous. I don't think I could do mountain biking. When, you know, for so many of us, it's just going out for a ride in the woods and having a great time. So how to get that message across more so it's not as scary to a lot of people and to reach wider, different audiences. So now I will pass on to Henry, who will talk about the Outdoors Day, which was new this year, and Henry can talk about it. Was it was your ideas, so go ahead.
I'm ready to go. So yeah, we wrapped up the first day. Some of us actually went out for a ride, and it was a particularly cold 1st of March, and we actually saw a little bit of snow on the tops and came back and had a bit of a social. After that, some people went straight to the pub, some of us went out in the hills, and then we got up the next morning to another freezing cold day, and basically carried on what we were doing, but in a more practical sense. So, you know, as mountain bikers, it's actually quite a novelty to sit down and talk about things. You know, it's not something we do very often. So a day of sitting around and chatting is good. 2 days of sitting down and chatting might be pushing it a little bit. So what we thought would be really good was to actually get outside and demonstrate a lot of the things we've been talking about. So we were up at Parkwood, as was sort of mentioned before. So Parkwood was the country's first urban trail centre. So we've got a 2K loop, sorry, 2 mile loop up there, which has been extended as well. So it's quite a bit longer now. So we've got a really nice loop that happens to be on the edge of some of the most deprived and diverse communities in the city as well. So we've got a real kind of opportunity to bring more people into the sport. So what we wanted to do is use that site there and actually, you know, do a number of things. So we had, one of the things we did, so everyone came up and we had a couple of tours of the site. So we have John Dallow, who has been really instrumental in making mountain biking work within Sheffield. So a lot of our trails are actually on council land. And what John did was take everyone round the trails. So we actually took them around the old trails and the new trails and sort of talked about the challenges of being a land manager, the challenges of being a land manager and dealing with mountain bikers, and also, you know, the challenges and opportunities really of building mountain bike trails where you wouldn't normally find mountain bike trails. So that was something that everyone got a chance to go for a tour around. And then we had a number of different activities which were there to just give people an opportunity to try stuff. So we had Hope Academy, who were doing skills for kids. We had some adaptive bikes from Thornbridge Outdoors. We had the Colour Collective, who were leading a ride there. And that ride, those pictures on those rides, these were people from the community. And it was really, really nice to see, again, what we've talked about, and this theme's come up a few times, where there were kids on fairly basic bikes in not really mountain bike clothing who came out and probably went on their first ever group ride. And they went out on a group ride that was led by, you know, people who look like them. And that's really, it sounds a really, really simple thing, but actually, you know, that was a really, really significant thing on that day. So that was really, really nice. They got led around by Joe Shui and Bare-Legged. So it was, a really, really nice ride out. We also had Ride Sheffield doing a trail day. We had Bike College doing Dr. Bikes and sharing their kind of bike refurb experience. Track Free Trails were there doing trail cleans. And also sharing sort of their inspiration on community activation. So what we had was a chance to go around and do loads and loads and loads of different activities, but also to speak to people in an informal manner about kind of what they were doing, why it was important, and actually share those bits of information. You know, Trash Free Trails do an amazing job of actually just, you know, this is to take away nothing from them, but they get people really excited about picking up litter and make them want to do it and make them value it. And, you know, that's a really, really important thing. So how do you get that messaging over? How are they doing that? So to go on a trail clean with them and to actually talk to them and have the opportunity to have a bit more of a conversation with afterwards is really good. The same with the trail building, the same with Hope Academy and all these things that we had up there. So, you know, it was a good chance to do that. We then followed this up and we have sort of information and contact details and best practice as well that we shared afterwards with participants. So we could actually build that bigger picture so people could then follow it up if they needed to. We then rounded it out with pizza. So we were lucky enough to have Sunshine Pizza oven there. So everybody who came along, all the attendees, but also anyone who's volunteering. And I think some of the people who came along the rides and people who were volunteering on the trail day all got a free pizza as well, which was, yeah, pretty welcome on a cold day. So that is kind of where we left things. As Manon mentioned, and I've shared these links in the chat. So there's a link to the website and there's a link to the report. So you can read a lot, you can find a lot more detail in that on there as well. But yeah, so yeah, last things really thank yous. Do you want me to roll through this, Manon? Or yeah, so we're really, really lucky and sort of with us as organizations and individuals, you know, we work with Rafa and Patagonia, and they've been really, really supportive. Particularly, you know, from sort of Ride Sheffield's perspective, we do work with Rafa, and they actually sort of support us and fund us and give us the opportunity to try stuff that we wouldn't normally do. Patagonia again have been fantastic. Cameo have come on board and actually supported the event in a number of different ways. So, you know, actually allowing us to send out maps so people could come for a longer, you know, come and explore the city and the trails around us, but also that we're actually, Ride Sheffield are working alongside Commute to actually, you know, show what can be done as a trail association. And I'm sure, again, that's something they might be keen to share sort of at a later date. But yeah, thanks to, you know, Ride Sheffield volunteers and everyone else who joined us and all the volunteers who make this happen. So, you know, this is always a team effort. It's a really, you know, we have a really lovely team. This feels like a really big event. And in some ways, the team that works really well together, it feels probably one of the least difficult things that I am involved in, sort of from putting on trail days and races. So it's a really, really kind of enjoyable organization and event to be part of. So yeah, really proud of kind of how we work together. Yeah, so next steps. Do you want to pick that one up, Manon?
I can never find myself to unmute. There you go. I found myself. Yes, okay, I can move on. And I just say, Sam and Kat, you've asked to share the presentation. Everything in this presentation is in the report. But we can also ask Robin if it can be sent out afterwards. But there's more detail in the report as well, to be honest. There's a bit more elaborated, a little bit more elaborated on each of the points. For next year, yes, I think we're going to invite
hey?
Do you have well, someone from Bristol who would like to. So next year Reframing is going to Bristol, which is very cool. So we're moving to a new location and a new team, and I think we did ask if someone is keen to come on and say some words.
I'm happy to, but I don't know who else is. I can't see who else is.
You can see Bridget, but yeah, do you want to say a few words, Fee?
Sure. Yeah. So Ride Bristol are going to host Reframing with the Reframing team next year, which is really exciting. We're forever being told that Bristol is like Sheffield, so it kind of makes sense to move it down here and have a go. I think, you know, we're not intending to change anything. We think the event's just been absolutely fantastic. It's so important for mountain biking. I've been to the last two, and I've both times have come away with just popping with ideas and thoughts about, you know, the future of the sport. And Bristol just poses a new opportunity to open it up to a potentially different audience or an expanded audience, and, you know, continue those conversations down south. So it's, yeah, really excited we're just at the start, really. We've only had a couple of conversations about what the event's going to look like. And yeah, it'd be really, really fun to shape the event over the next few months. So happy to, happy to be kind of representing Ride Bristol and also University of Bristol, I think, kind of in partnership for the event next year. So I don't know what else there is to say apart from make sure you sign up and we'll see you down in Bristol.
Thanks, Bree. And yeah, we definitely have a goal this year to share dates well in advance.
Yes.
Partly driven by Fee getting us organised. So there should hopefully be a date out before too long.
Yeah, any minute now.
Yes, for anyone who would like to join. And then when we booked in this call, we were keen to see and hear from anyone who might have had progress, challenges, or ideas over the summer. So I've mentioned already a little bit, I think these social rides that North Cardiff Trails have done have been really great and a really great outreach opportunity to the community and connected with a lot of new people. But I saw at the start, there's definitely a fair number of people who were at Reframing this year, and also people who haven't been at Reframing before. So if anyone does feel like sharing any ideas they've had, feel free. And I will unshare my screen.
Right, while people...
I maybe will ask Henry about what I've seen that Ride Sheffield and Steel City are doing around PT's Bike Bonanza with the Women's Days at Breno. Because that seems like, you're on mute, but that also seems like a cool thing that I know you've been talking about for a while.
Yeah, so we're working with Peak Gravel Gang, so we're almost like, it's actually an idea that we wanted to run this year, and it was actually and it will be something we run hopefully in 2025 as well. Unfortunately, because we didn't have a race this year, because we just had too many diary clashes to put on PT Steel City Downhill this year, and we wanted to do coaching. So one of the things we had feedback on was that it can be kind of a bit of an intimidating thing to jump straight into. But what we're doing on the 9th of November is working with Peak Gravel Gang. So they're going to be delivering some skill sharing sessions. So bringing some sort of experienced riders and coaches and giving sort of women riders the opportunity to practice certain sections of the tracks and get some race coaching up there as well in a sort of supportive atmosphere. So yeah, the best way to do it, you can find information about it on sort of Steel City, Ride Sheffield and Peak Gravel Gang's Instagrams at the moment. But yeah, it should be really exciting, and we're hoping to make something slightly bigger with a bit of support from Rafa in 2025. We just got to find a date for the race, and then hopefully we can plan those things around it too.
Cool.
I might also just adjust what Kev's written in the chat. That yeah, I do recognise there's very mixed pictures across the UK of where people are at in terms of I guess the maturity of organisations and what people are able to do. So I think Reframing, there's a lot of opportunities, and then there's also, I guess, trying to share ideas of what can be done. But also recognising that trail groups are absolutely, or bike parks, and people wanting to get projects off the ground. There's very different stages. So yeah, not everyone is able to do as many things when, it's just trying to get trails off the ground in the first place. But yeah, sharing the really cool examples and I think inspiring examples, and then seeing what can be applied to yourself or what can be taken as inspiration going forward. But yeah,
on that point as well, I think actually grassroots races and like the things I know I'm not sure if they're the market raising ones or that you're doing, Kev, but like actually having that's almost a great example of taking the mountain biking to the people. So people, in Lincolnshire, where it might not be seen as a mountain biking hotspot, but actually still showing that you can have, fun on a bike anywhere near you live. You know, the best trails are the ones you can ride to from your door. So actually, you know, that's a really good opportunity. I think the guys at Ride Northampton are probably a good example of that, of just showing that you can put a facility like anywhere really, and have a really, really good quality facility, which allows people to enjoy mountain biking somewhere where there probably wasn't much chance to do that.
Can you hear me? Oh, yeah, it's right. It's an ex-military headset. It doesn't always work on this. I've actually met Peter at Northampton because we were actually looking at on track to, or back on track, but as it was back then, to build the bike park, and there's tendering for it. But all the racing that I've been putting on is cross country, just solid because I haven't really found the hilly enough area, and we can't operate at the bike park area at the minute. Until we've done phase 1 and passing places, which is another condition. But all the racing I've been putting on is on private land, so even after the race they can't access it, and because we are the largest farming county, you can't go on public footpaths, bridleways. You may as well ride on a 20-mile ride, you're riding 15-mile on road when you do bridleway foot and stuff like that. So yeah, it's quite challenging in Lincolnshire. It's took us 2 years to get through the planning application process and get it passed with 2 committees that we've had to sit just to get it through planning permission for the bike park, and that was 100 grand spent just to get it through planning. But now we're at the situation where we've been conditioned that much, it's going to cost us another 100 grand just to get to the phase of building the trails and being able to open. So it's just a cost exercise with no facilities here. So yeah, I was getting 100 people to each race, so I wasn't even breaking even at most cases. But just because I like putting the racing on, I kept doing it. So we did get a bit of sponsorship by some bike brands, but again, bike brands aren't interested in putting money into anything here because it isn't a mountain bike area. And you know, so where we're located in the Wolds, I don't know if you know Lincolnshire very well, but Belmont Tower, the big glowy thing that you can see for miles, you think you see it from Yorkshire as well. It's right next to there. So we have got hills. We're not flat, but again, because we're not well known, we're not, you know, Steve Pete and Dovey Bike Park and the Athertons and stuff like that. No one wants to plough money into it. So yeah, we're at a bit of a loose end at the minute, but we haven't got anything for 2 hours drive. So I think Leeds Urban Bike Park or Ride Sheffield is, or Steel City is the nearest place to us to actually go and ride.
Cool, thanks, Kev. I mean, that raises an interesting point, doesn't it, about inclusion? You know, inclusion obviously is geographical inclusion as well, and it's you know, there are some parts of the country, you know, using, you know, as you pointed out, Lincolnshire Wolds, that don't have access to many mountain bike facilities of any type, whether that's, you know, green trails, blue trails, red trails, or black trails, right? You know, what we collectively as a community do about that is, I suppose, is a harder thing to answer. All I can suggest is you come along to Reframing and we'll talk about it then.
You all need to come up here and help me build.
I was going to suggest whether you have seen the article on the Trail Hub with potential sources of funding. I'm sure you will have looked at.
I haven't, no. So one of the big things about funding around here is that so when it looked like Labour was going to get into government, and obviously I'm not political, but all the grant funding stopped here because we are a big farming community. So our local MP is Conservative, so she was pushing and pushing and pushing for loads of grants, but now they've all stopped. So yeah, and any money that was going to come from the council stopped as well, because it's then going to become a Labour government, which obviously didn't help us whatsoever. But yeah, it's just what do you do when you've got nothing?
I think funding's a real challenge. It's always going to be a challenge, and I think sometimes it's, you know, finding someone who, the only person I can think of who comes from that way as a mountain biker is Ben Hildred. But I think it's really interesting when you look at sort of the geographical spread of what mountain biking looks like, and sometimes just appreciating that, you know, in like in sort of East Anglia and sort of Norfolk and heading down that way, quite a lot of the mountain biking they've got a really strong dirt jump community. And there's places like, Twisted Oaks and things like that, which is, miles from anywhere, which has really started to make a go of that style of riding. And I think, sometimes it's easy to just picture mountain biking as one thing. And I think sometimes mountain biking can be quite a lot of things to different people.
Yeah, so because of our location, and obviously nothing been around, was actually the bike park is actually going to cater for the majority of off-road disciplines, including cyclocross. We've got dual line slaloms, 4-cross tracks, and everything, as well as black and red runs. We're sort of undecided whether the cyclocross is going to double up as the XC as well. But yeah, we're going to hit everything in the off-road discipline. So, but again, with the tourism, obviously Lincolnshire is massive for caravans. We've got more caravans per square mile than anywhere in Europe. So the tourism's there. And they've literally got to come past the door to get to Skeg Vegas and Mablethorpe. So yeah, it's not like it won't work and people won't travel. But we've also, although because we had quite a bit of an upset in the community, so the business partner owns the land. The estate's been in the family for 1,000 years, and they used to own the local village. So that was a bit of an upset when we put the planning permission in, and they just went against us. So we can't actually do anything outside the letter of the law like you normally would do. You just start building trails in the woodlands where no one can access, and then you're ready to open. Yeah, we're getting scrutinised for everything we do by everyone, so we have to be careful as well.
Cool. Well, look, I'm gonna maybe we'll come back to that later, Kevin. I just want to give people a chance to sort of, as Manon was trying to do, get people to share their learnings over the summer. Andy, I know you've got some learnings to share with us.
Yeah, thanks for putting me on the spot. Yeah, no, reframing was really good. And also, I feel for you, Kev, because I grew up in Lincolnshire. Washingborough. It's fucking flat.
It's not. You was in the floodplains. Shows your hands. Shows your the webs. Yeah, web. Look, there you are. He's a floodplain man.
Yeah, no, the Wolds are good. The Wolds got hills. We had Steep Hill in Lincoln.
Yeah, that's not that steep though, is it? I used to do shorter runs up there with logs.
Anyway, what was I talking about? So reframing, yeah. So, I did go to the reframing last year. Sheffield did put on a very good show. I think the few things that we did following that, one was we did have a fairly good women's dig based on another group of a women's riding group. Unfortunately, that sort of died a bit of a death on our side. So we have been pushing to get the women's digging going again, which is starting to sort of get some traction. The other thing we've been working on is trying to get kids into the digging more. So we started working with a local school who are bringing in some of their more challenging kids, or kids who aren't responding to sort of normal academic sitting in classrooms and learning stuff kind of thing. So they're a boisterous bunch and quite hard to keep control of, but we are making some really good progress with them. They're coming every couple of weeks. It's being done under the sort of D of E banner, so that they'll get their D of E qualification thing at the end of it. So that's going quite well. And the other thing, the big thing that we've just launched, which as volunteers we've had less to do with, but is a green trail, so an adaptive bike specific green trail. And And it's interesting. It was On Track who won that bid. I think it was based on some DEFRA money that the forestry was able to get hold of. I think it's interesting that there seems to be more money around for greens and blues than there are for the higher grades. I think because of the sort of inclusivity of those kind of trails, they really help get people who weren't mountain biking for mountain biking. So yeah, so that was quite a big project. It's about 3 miles long, and got a couple of skills areas in it. And the reason, I think, without sharing too many secrets, the On Track guys did a really good job of bringing to life a trail that was specific for adaptive bikes, rather than just sort of doing a green trail and then saying, here's a few things that make it adaptive. I think as you go up the levels, as you get sort of red and black, they seem to they just want to ride normal trails at that on those levels, on the bowheads and things. They just want to know, really what they want to know at that level is, how wide is it? Can we get the wheels through? Are they going to stall on features like that? But generally, if it's wide enough, then they'll ride anything. Ski run. All our double blacks get ridden by bowheads. So yeah, no, reframing is good. Looking forward to it being in Bristol. I was quite pro that idea when it came up, and yeah, I'd be happy to help Fee if DTV and anything we can do from the forest side. We're not that far away.
Oh, thanks, Andy. Oh, sorry, Mel.
I'm going to say, it's 2 things. I really like first thing about when Mendips first talked about getting teenagers involved on a volunteering point of view, and tying that into the DOV seems like a really cool thing to do, and that's cool that you're managing to make that happen as well. It's pretty
yeah,
good.
sort of, yeah. No, it's not. It's nice to be able to sort of feel like you because it's interesting because these kids aren't necessarily mountain bikers at all, so they're just coming into this. But it's interesting how the trails can bring something to people who aren't even bikers. A couple of them are, and a couple of them got dads who ride, so they get it. But yeah.
I also wanted to ask about, in terms of like presence in the community. I've only seen this on social media, but when DTV are, I guess, like fundraising days, when you have a stall,
Yeah.
that seems like how does that normally organise? And
So we do a lot of table sales because we get a lot of donations of kit, and I don't really know, because the DTV's been going for 20 odd years, and all these things have sort of grown up over time, but we've got a real momentum of, we've got one container now full of stuff that gets given to us, tires, old bits of kit, clothing. We get quite a lot from brands, also from some magazines will give us stuff that they've been given and they've done for a couple of rides, that sort of thing. Yes, and then we did Podfest this year, which is really something that's been pushed by the businesses in the area. So the Pedal a Bike Away run it, but then we come along. So there's lots of brands there, and then we can run our table sale, and it's a great source of funding. And the guy who runs it, Rob, is an absolute star, because without him, it wouldn't be very hard to get it off the ground. There's a I don't know if anyone's heard the women's what's it, the Hope Women Festival is coming south next year, and might be in the forest. You didn't hear it from me.
You know what? Do you know what weekend that is? So we could maybe coordinate dates, perhaps.
I think it's August time, that one.
Okay, so it's not spring. All right. And then just going back to the Green Trail, I mean, have you been? I know on a few calls ago you met one of the guys riding the adaptive bikes, and he offered to sort of help you out and come and look at any of your trails. Have you managed to make that happen yet, or not? Not yet.
No, he hasn't been very well, so he hasn't been able to make it. We have had a couple of chats back and forth. He's trying to find me someone else to come along, so that we can get. So really, we want to make sure everything we build is adaptive ready. But as I say, the feedback I've got so far is just make sure it's wide enough. That's all. They don't want special trails. They love riding the trails we've got. So at the reds and blacks level, it seems pretty straightforward. Obviously on the green, it was a different story. You've got a much wider range of adaptive bikes that are going to be riding that. All sorts of varieties and catering for all sorts of disabilities.
Okay, yeah, so not just skill levels, but also very different types of bike on those trails.
Yeah, so a lot more upright, different configurations. Whereas the bowhead seems to be dominating. We do because Countdown and Launchpad were designed as adaptive bike trails, and it's amazing how they've really become one of our most popular trails for everyone, despite because they were built for adaptive bikes. It just makes it so fun to ride for everyone. And on those, we used to run gravity 4-wheel gravity bikes, but the logistics of those is just so hard in terms of how many. You need a truck, you need uplift, you need a couple of wingmen. It's just really hard when the bowheads have really taken over. So having that the electric motor in it. It does raise issues for our Forestry England friends in terms of letting bowheads on, because they're not technically, except for the pedal one, the more downhill orientated ones are not technically bikes because they're throttle based. So it's how do you legislate for that, because we don't want to open the door to it's just it's one of those things that when you actually try and write down what you want to do, it seems obvious, and it's like there's a big difference between a Sur-Ron and a bowhead and the kind of people riding them, but to legislate that is quite hard.
Thanks. Jez, I might put you on the spot in a minute. You didn't I see you ran a dig day with the RAF or the Army recently? Jez? He's not listening to me. Has anyone got any other sort of updates or anything else from stuff they've done over the summer that just for Manon's, what Manon was talking about before? Everyone's shaking their heads at me.
Our local police, they contacted us about, I can't remember what the term they used, but I call them ASBO kids. Instead of giving them ASBOs and stuff like that, they wanted them to come to us and basically volunteer, let's say 5 hours of trail building, but in return, what they'll do is they'll get some cycle coaching, some mountain bike coaching or something like that. So that might be a good way of getting into a local community for getting trail builders, Andrew.
Yeah, no, I like that.
At a young age as well.
Yeah, we did have a couple of volunteers who fresh out of prison, looking.
Was he on chains and balls?
Yeah. No, they were looking for a way of showing that, you know, they were dependable and trying to get back into work. So volunteering is often a good stepping stone. But yeah, we didn't get much traction with that. It seemed like a good thing to try and be doing.
Yeah, it's community support officers who approached us, and then the police, the Lincolnshire Police and Crime Commissioner, his office, he sent his staff over in a big meeting with us to try and get, like, certainly under 16, sort of 13 to 16-year-olds.
Yeah,
who were causing trouble and breaking windows and stuff like that. The less serious crime.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're London based, it's probably a bit more serious, but you know.
Okay, I'm going to try and put a few more people on the spot. What about you boys from Northampton Bike Park and Ride Northampton? Anything interesting going on there in terms of working with the community or different things happening on the trails, either maintenance or riding?
I'll hand over to Tony from his side first, if I can.
Thanks, Pete. I didn't see that bus coming. We've been struggling a little bit with the weather, I guess. The limestone that we have had our trails built out of is the fines are getting washed out. It's all at the bottom of the hill now. So we had 40 tons delivered a couple of weeks ago, which we managed to get some volunteer drivers to dump off in various piles. Pete organised the material, thanks Pete, and the first pile's nearly gone on one berm and a takeoff, so it doesn't go very far. But we're just learning how to manage it. We've probably got 50% of the bike park to resurface, which is going to take a while. But it's holding up. It's holding up in most of the places. But yeah, weather and people has been an issue this year.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, just pop in as well. We're starting to try and get volunteers to run Go Ride clubs, the British Cycle and Go Ride Club, just generally at the bike park. Like everybody, you know, just trying to get volunteers is is a bit of a nightmare. You know, we are there. We're a wonderful place. It's a free to use facility. The Go Ride Club is essentially been put on free for the last 6 months, and every coaching session. So I'm with Kev on it, you know, so it's just getting people there sometimes as well. But generally, yeah, it's as Tony says, it's going well. Trails are holding up nicely, and it's a slow build, and that's what you've got to work on. It's a slow build, not a major project for the next 30 years. It's not just a 1-year project.
Cool, thank you guys. I was just wondering if who was I going to ask? Hang on, sorry. Sam and Kat, in Oxford, you're at the very early days of the Oxford Trail Association, but I mean, I suppose, is there anything that you've heard on today's call that sort of resonates with you? I mean, you know, these are problems you've yet to have, I suppose.
Yeah, we've been writing so many notes throughout the call, picking up loads of useful things. So yeah, just to make kind of people aware on the call, we only set up as an unincorporated association 2 weeks ago after lots of discussions with some fellow riders in the area. We're currently looking at some potential projects. Some areas where we've got potential for money from councils but not the land, and then other areas where we've got the land but not the money, and there's lots of little things that we're trying to figure out. We're also right at the early stages of doing stakeholder engagement with the community. We also face the same problems as what Kev has. Oxfordshire is not conducive for mountain biking, though it does have a couple of kind of XC kind of areas. Also, it's probably one of the most unfriendliest counties to cycling. That was quite unexpected, actually. So I think there's a really big challenge that we've got with kind of impacting the hearts and minds of the community. Another thing we find as well within the area is so much of the land with lots of potential is either like a triple SI or private land as well. So yeah, not too much to report. What I'd say is that we are been speaking with some local district councils are really supportive of our cause. So yeah, we're very much at the start, but I was kind of noting the point of knowledge sharing between organisations. Andrew, I've actually been spying a lot on the DTV website, looking at your constitution and how you guys are set up. Me and Kat actually did some volunteering for one of your trail digs last year as well. So we're definitely going to be reaching out to a lot of you, particularly when it comes to the more paperwork side of things, like, you know, risk assessments, public liability insurance, things like that.
Sam,
the trail hub is the perfect place to do that. Jez, are you hearing me now? Yeah, it looks like he's heard me this time. I noticed you did a volunteer day with the Army or the RAF recently. Is that right?
Yeah. We the RAF from Leaming have been in 3 times now at Dolby. So it's a sort of I think it's Wednesdays where they used to have like a sports day thing in the forces. So they're still allowed to come out and do things. So there's a guy there who just seems to have got it all organised, and we've had sort of 5, 9, 7 guys coming in, and they do like to work. So we get an awful lot done. It's really good. And strangely enough, I've also had a corporate dig day at Stainburn with some guys from the Department of Transport in Leeds who turned up because one guy's been on a dig day just on his own, and then he realised that he could get volunteer days at work. So he's organised that through work and being up on some work. So I can see a little bit possibility of getting more people in on corporate dig days, particularly in the week.
Cool, thanks, Jez. Anything else that relates to the early part of the conversation in terms of anything else you took away? Because you were reframing as well. You certainly there on the Saturday digging away. Anything you took out of it personally?
Well, yeah, I have been doing a lot of pondering and thinking, and I must admit that the big thing for me seems to be that you need to make mountain biking seem more, for a better word, normal. Because as Manon said, it was things like, oh well, it's dangerous, and it's not really. But you need to get kids into biking at a very early age, and it's almost like going to school and back is fine, but then on the way home, can you not do a little off-road? You know what I mean? And I think the big problem is this feeling that there isn't many places to ride. And even around here, there's very few bridleways. I mean, I ride mostly on footpaths because there's not a lot of people around here, and you can. But the need for more urban mountain biking, so it becomes part of the norm, or it's not even part of the norm. It's just the opportunities there. I think is something that really does need to happen. You know, to move it on, to make it just a normal thing to do.
Yeah, good point. Andy, you had your hand up.
Yeah, just a couple of things. So I think what Jez said about the corporate digs, I think there's something quite big in getting the corporate, trying to get that sort of, especially if you've got an association that's a charity, so you're a registered charity, which seems to get rid of a lot of the hassle for the corporate folk. But we've started we've been working with a local engineering firm. So there are about 3,000 people. They've all got 3 days a year that they need to do volunteering. And we get their internal marketing person then starts promoting our digs through their volunteering hub, right, however that works. But we're getting 2 or 3 on a regular basis midweek, so it is good. It's good for the midweek digs, and as soon as you become a charity, it seems like it's a no-brainer for people who are mountain bikers. And then there's also money, which I haven't figured out yet, but they have money for grants and things that will go to charities. So it's just trying to work out how we start ticking the boxes for the corporates to make spending money with us part of their sort of do good thing that they can then promote.
Cool. Kev, you got your hand up, or is that a hangover from last time you spoke? I'll assume it was.
No, Kev, sorry, you were on mute then.
Oh, there we are. Look, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Sorry, technology, eh? It's not a mobile phone. If Sam wants some information, I heard him mention triple SI scheme. So we're in an AOMB and triple SI scheme where the bike park is. So I've got all the framework and everything to go there if they need any help. So I'm not sure how to direct message if I've done it properly, but yeah, if you need any information or if you want to see our full pack for the planning permission, let us know and I can send stuff over to you.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
That'd be
Thanks,
great.
Kev. We'll I'll chuck our email address in the group chat if people don't mind.
It's 2 years of heartache that I went through, so I don't wish it on my own worst enemies. So I'll do anything I can to help you. So yeah, just be aware that you're talking 5-6 grand per survey.
Yeah. That's really useful to know. Thank you.
I obviously have to say this, but Kev, it's about time you accepted your invite to the Trail Hub and started posting all that up there, right? So it's all there for everyone to benefit from, rather than hidden behind emails.
Do you know what? It's just me who runs everything. So the racing, the coaching, trying to get the bike park sorted, trying to get funding. It's like as well as everything else, and 3 kids. Yeah, my
Well, it'll take hardly any more time than sending an email.
I'd be more than happy to share anything you'll need. So yeah, just pop me an email with whatever I need to do, and then I can do it.
I will do it. I'll do it after this call. Bridget, I'm going to put you on the spot now. I know you're one of the ones behind all the women's rides at Ride Bristol.
Yeah, that's right. We run a monthly women's ride around the trails at Ashton Court and New Woods, and we're also doing a community ride which is mixed. So in the evenings, which is the 3rd Thursday of the month, and they're proving to be really popular. So I think it was probably the brainchild of Fee. She set it up. Unfortunately, her link dropped out again, and it just seems to be going from strength to strength. We had the Project Fierce launch on Saturday at the beginning of the month, and I think there were about 80 riders there. It was incredible. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it, but it's going really well.
Do you know if that is public now, Bridget? I was trying to find a link to the PS framework to share in the. Yes,
it's definitely been made public. I'll see if I can find a link and put it on the chat.
Yeah, it's on the it's on the Trail Hub.
Right, there we go.
Someone posted it on the women's thread a couple of days ago, and it's behind a sort of a survey wall on the Ride Bristol website. I did think about filling in the survey so we could download it directly, but I presume Fee wants to capture that data, so I decided not to do that. But yeah, so I haven't seen it myself because I didn't go through the sort of form process to sign up for it. But yeah, it's definitely published. And then I suppose, obviously, part of those Ride Bristol rides, Bridget, certainly the ones on Thursday nights, you all go to the pub afterwards. So there's a real social aspect to them as well, isn't there?
Yeah, that's the plan. Yeah. We did a summer solstice ride. I think it must have been in June. It was around the 21st. And I think we must have had about 60 riders. We had 3 or 4 groups going out doing different styles of riding. Because obviously you've got those that want to do the steep techie stuff, you've got people who are less confident, and the idea was that we catered for everybody. So I mean, it's all predicated on having the ride leaders that are willing to volunteer their time and actually lead a group. But it certainly seems to be growing. So yeah, it's really good. The Bristol scene is quite vibrant at the moment.
It's cool. I noticed. I mean, like any scene, there's different aspects to it. So there's I'm also in Bristol for everyone's information, but there's also a group called what they call, I think they're called. Oh, I forgot what they're called now. Something Bristol Grit or something. I think they're called.
Oh yeah, Bristol Grit.
Yeah, and I noticed that. I mean, a lot of them turned up to that Saturday launch ride as well. It's good. So it's nice to see Ride Bristol bringing all those different riding groups, different groups, within the scene together, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Nice to see. And the cakes were very good after the ride too. Right, I'm going to David in the Tweed Valley. Is there anything you can update us on what's going on in the Tweed Valley?
Hello. Yeah, I can try and give you a little update from at least what I know. Not that I'm involved in everything, but I'm involved in some things. So yeah, I think I'd mentioned to Robin before, and yeah, I'll let you guys here know that we're hoping to launch publicly soon. I say soon, there's not many of us working on it. There's really just 2 of us, myself included at the minute, that are mainly working on it, but we're hoping to get more people involved. Is essentially a local version of essentially the UK MTB Trail Alliance. Essentially, we're most likely going to use the name TAG, which would stand for Tweed Trails Advocacy Group. And our main focus will be to essentially do kind of advocacy work around trails within the Tweed Valley. So with really trying to work with councillors and politicians and land managers and then people in the community, and essentially try and act as a sort of very hopefully helpful communication hub, since it's quite busy in the Tweed Valley. There's I mean, essentially most of the economic structure is around mountain biking now. It's insane, it's huge, and it's just growing bigger and bigger, but it's kind of becoming a bit of a mess in some places, just really hard to manage with that many groups, that many organizations. So we're hoping, and also crucially, there's lots of different organizations, but there isn't really a community group as of yet to represent the mountain bike community. So that's hopefully what we're going to try and fill that spot with this new group. And as I said, also, as well as that kind of communication community group hub, the other goal is to try and do some advocacy work. So trying to encourage sort of funding where it's needed, and perhaps like kind of key planning permissions where it's needed, by just kind of working with lots of different groups and people and politicians and stuff to try and do our best to make that happen. So yeah, we're not public as of yet. We've got a few things to still figure out, but we're hoping soon we'll be able to make that kind of public announcement. So that's kind of one thing that I've certainly been involved in. Alongside that, I'm a member of Tweed Valley Trails Association, so I'm not on the board, but I'm still a member. And yeah, they've been doing lots of good work recently, running lots of dig days, things like that, which is really cool. And yeah, they've got various things in the works. I think just because the main people that Tweed Valley Trails Association works with is Forestry and Land Scotland, there's a lot of kind of, I guess it's like a sort of long, slow process a lot of the time, because Forestry and Land Scotland don't really have a very big department when it comes to sort of mountain biking and the kind of recreation side of things. It's quite a small department that they've got. They've not got a lot of staff on that, so we have to work within their limitations, and they've got quite a lot of limitations. So that's kind of probably slower than we'd want, I guess, but it is still going, which is great. And yeah, aside from that, yeah, there's lots of good trail building happening, lots of cool stuff. It's been really good also just hearing all the stuff mentioned earlier in those talks. I'm definitely going to pass it on to the other folks at TVTA around the trash-free trails and also the kind of inclusivity stuff. I think that's really important and really interesting, and hopefully we can start to see more of that as that knowledge is spread. But that's most of the updates from me, so thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Sorry to put you on the spot. Go on, I'll let Manon ask a question, but then I've got one.
Well, I might jump in at this point because I was also thinking this in terms of when Sam and Kat talked about winning hearts and minds as well. Something North Cardiff Trails have done is trash-free trail cleans, and they're a really great way to show that you're really, you really want to benefit the area where the trails are, and you really are committed to putting the time in to look after the places that we're riding in. And I think trash-free trails also plays a really important part in this idea of reframing what mountain biking is and what it can be, and that we can also really give back to these spaces as well. So definitely trail cleans and trail associations are a really great mix, a really great combination to also show, that we're willing to put the time and effort in to improve these places.
Definitely, yeah. No, I think that's something that I'm certainly going to mention to the rest of the TVTA members and board members. But yeah, I think that is something that they would probably be keen for too, I'd imagine. I know I'm certainly keen for it. So yeah, hopefully that's something that we can start to see more of moving forward. Because yeah, I mean, it's certainly, even if it's just a year or whatever, it's kind of spreading that message and creating that kind of mindset for people to follow, which is really important.
Well, Dave, the question I had was, obviously there was the really sad news about Tweed Love shutting down. I mean, what for people that don't know, Tweed Love is an events company that ran lots of different types of mountain bike races, but almost sort of mini festivals, really quite inclusive, and certainly, tried to bring the local community with them. Or not, I'm sure they weren't always popular, but it really did feel like they had a major impact in the Tweed Valley. I mean, how's everyone feeling if now they've closed? Is there any news there? Or
yeah, I can give you a quick update. I mean, I certainly I know the guy Neil who ran it. I'm sort of like semi-close to him, in good communication with him. So yeah, essentially it was a bit of a shame. It was a number of things that caused it to kind of close down. It's not something that happened overnight. It has been bubbling for a little while. I kind of knew this might happen. Essentially, it's the age-old money is always the bane of everyone's lives, I guess. Events, as Kev was saying earlier on, are really hard to run and really hard to make money from, and often actually just make a loss. It is unfortunate with things that have got really expensive, especially in the past few years for events to get running. Really a lot of high costs, and they've increased massively, and that's really affected so many mountain bike events. I mean, it's not just Tweed Love that have shut down. Also, people probably have noticed there is no Fort William World Cup downhill this year. That's the first time in 20 years. Same reason. From what I know people. I've chatted to people who are kind of either in that sort of space or know people in that space. It's the same sort of reason. Lack of funds that have caused this issue of not being able to run events. So that's kind of the main reason. There's other reasons too, around struggling for staffing, trying to find suitable people for different positions. It's sometimes quite challenging, that as well. And just kind of general red tape when it comes to running these events. As Kev has also pointed out earlier, there's a huge amount of it. You've got to try and get various permissions and loads and loads of different hoops to jump through, and it's only getting harder and harder, it seems like. And that's just put a huge amount of extra blocks on things too. So yeah, all this kind of combined together has sadly meant that it's not been able to run. But I guess all good things come to an end. It certainly had an amazing run of it. I mean, geez, over 10 years. I remember when I was a kid, living in the Tweed Valley, doing my first Tweed Love race and things like that. I was really sick. So yeah, I mean, I've certainly had a good time. I don't know everyone else has. It was big smiles at the end of it. In fact, I was actually really sick. My sister was racing and she was able to get a P3, so we were all pretty stoked. But yeah, it was sad to see it go. But you know, you gotta try and look at the positives, I guess. I mean, like at the end of the day, there's more. That's kind of why I'm trying to start focusing on the sort of community stuff. Trying to start this new advocacy group to try and start getting bigger people, you know, politicians, councillors, things like that, getting them involved, getting more eyes on this, and turning it from that niche sport that a couple of people know about into something that not necessarily everyone has to do, but maybe more people understand it. And crucially, more people in positions of power and in positions where they can grant funding and grant permissions can understand it and respect it and being able to work with it rather than just either ignore it or work against it. Really, that's kind of my goal. And it sounds certainly like that's a kind of major goal of the Trail Alliance too, which I think is great. And hopefully moving forward, we can start to kind of make more differences little by little, bit by bit, to start just making these events and these like sort of great things that we all love and the racing and everything else start to happen. And I think also like things will start to just evolve over time, you know, like maybe, you know, there might be less of these kind of like really, or like, you know, it's just hard to say, you know, like what would replace Tweed Love, but and what would replace like the Fort William Downhill World Cup, who knows? But let's just hope it's something positive. That's what I'm saying.
Cool. That's a really nice way of putting it. Thank you. Jez, you had your hand up for a while.
Yeah, it's one for Sam and Kat. A bit like what Manon was saying, trying to ingratiate yourselves with the local community. The Weatherby Bike Park, which has been a real, it's only small, but it's a real success. To start with, it wasn't very popular locally, but the group did well by picking things off to start with. You know, before they could get permission for it all, they were doing things like vegetation clearance, clearing. There was a particular bridleway that had about 1.5 foot of mud on it, and all it just needed clearing off. The drains were all blocked. So we had a dig day there, and that went down a storm with all the locals, because particularly it was a very popular horse riding route. So with things like that, getting yourself in and clearing some of the local footpaths for people who dog walkers and stuff like that, suddenly they felt like you were on their side and you were trying to help. So there was you got less and less resistance as time went on, because you got more and more people buying in. And then they did what was called the Little Turn, which was a tiny pump track for balance bikes, you know, just 3 rollers of 300 height, 70 meters long, and that was just in a field. And again, that went down well with all the locals and the kids, you know, and the parents, because it's just behind the school. So it was softly work your way in. So when even though there was objections to the little bike parks there, it was generally more in a minority by then, and there was then a lot more buy-in. And now all the locals think it's great, and you very rarely hear a bad word against it. So I think, you know, doing lots of little things to start with that maybe don't cost a lot of money, but it's just volunteer time that you can go and say, and you can shout about it on social media and go, you know, we've cleared that footpath that's been, you know, people have been complaining about for ages. It doesn't have to be anything to do with biking. It's just making you feel like you're part of the community, you're doing something for the community. Hope that helps.
Yeah, no, thanks, Jez. That's really, really useful. Yeah, it's definitely kind of got me thinking. I think one challenge that we've got, and apologies if this kind of overtakes any other discussions, is our lack of trail density. So, I mean, I've ridden a fair bit in the Tweed Valley, and you've got just so many fantastic trails in a very kind of small area. So it's quite easy to kind of identify that community. And I guess we've been quite ambitious from the get-go of, rather than looking at our kind of small area with me and my wife that have started this, we're based in Abingdon, it's only a very small part of Oxfordshire. But if you only looked at that area, we would be looking at 2 pump tracks, and that'd be it. So yeah, I think the challenge that we've got is how you can try and impact that broad community in a larger geographical area in a positive way, which I think is something I'm going to rack my brains on over the next kind of couple of months as we're trying to do that community kind of outreach. But I think coming back to another point that you said, which we're definitely thinking of, is trying to start small, not pick off more we can chew, focus on an area and then kind of grow it from there. And that sounds like what you guys have done, picked a little bit and then just added on and grown it from there.
Yeah. As I say, that sort of thing where it took quite a long time just to get the council to buy into, because it was maybe 50, 60 meters, and it was an old, probably a pack horse trail or something like that, and it was underneath was all stone. It was a proper made thing that had been in there for hundreds of years, and all the drainage was blocked up, and nothing was getting off. And there was talk about doing all sorts of things, and in the end, we just used wheelbarrows and shovels and shoveled an awful lot of muck off. And suddenly, everybody was really happy, and it's like, oh, right, these guys actually are useful. You know what I mean? And then you clear a few trails, get rid of some brambles, cut some vegetation back, and then suddenly it's all picking up. And I think with, including the trash-free trails in there, if you got that going as well, just kept clearing stuff and things like that, then suddenly you'd be somebody to talk to, and you'd seen as being a positive contribution to the community, and then you get more traction with that.
Cool. Dave, you got your hand up?
I was just going to add to that quickly. That can be quite a powerful thing, actually. It's something that TVTA, Tweed Valley Trails Association, have done a little bit in the past. Not a lot of, since like they've kind of got their work cut out, like with that many mountain bike trails to deal with in Tweed Valley. But certainly there is one really popular kind of bridle way called Gypsy Glen Trail, which is essentially like a multi-use trail. It's really old for mountain bikers and horse riders and walkers, and it's kind of used fairly equally by all, actually. And they've done work on that and are planning to do work on that more in the future. Something that I'm also looking to get involved in that too, around doing like kind of basic maintenance work, like, cutting back vegetation and, sorting out drainage, etc., and getting rid of loose stuff. And it's always quite a nice thing to do because it benefits a much larger variety of user groups other than just mountain bikers. And it's something that you can really kind of then rant and rave about on the socials and stuff to basically just kind of show you're a trail association. That doesn't mean that you're necessarily exclusively about mountain bike trails. And then, you can get that support from all user groups, which then gives you more clout when you're putting in your planning permission and things like that to councils, showing that actually you're benefiting lots of people, not just one teeny tiny little niche. So yeah, definitely all the best with that, but hopefully you'll get there.
Cool, nice one. Yeah, I've made some good notes of that. Thanks very much for that, both Dave and Jazz.
Yeah, and I mean, just to add to that, I mean, that's one big thing that Peak District and MTB have done is over a period of many years, through lots of time and effort, have built themselves that reputation, and mostly by helping to maintain public bridleways that obviously not just mountain bikers ride, but lots of different users ride, and have sort of, I think, really positively changed the reputation of mountain bikers in the Peak District. Cool. There was one more person I was going to ask. Roddy, how are things going at Ochil?
Yeah, good, thanks. The Ochil Trail Association has been kind of early stages. So yeah, we're kind of same boat as Sam and Kat. Just so much on this call has been really resonated a lot. I mean, that last point from Dave, in our area, we've got a lot of multi-use paths, so it's kind of if you're sort of familiar with the area, it's kind of round about Stirling, Clackmannanshire, and the Ochil Hills, which quite steep. So a lot of the riding is just inherently fairly technical. We've got Cambus Barron just along the road, and they do some really good stuff with trash-free trails. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with trash-free Cambu. It was actually Ali kind of put me onto the UK Trail Association Trail Alliance, sorry. So yeah, we've done a trail clean kind of inspired by those guys, which has been really good. I think we're in a super fortunate position where we've got lots of different riding areas, and we've all kind of come together with a lot of different groups, and it's all quite a small area, so we all kind of intermingle. But looking to formalize trail maintenance first and foremost, and then hopefully look to do more, because there is there's just a lot of trail fairy activity happens. It's there's good riding in the area. But we also have a project to try to get a small skills park built, which will be on quite a steep slope, but kind of graded. So we have a feasibility study from On Track, and that is the kind of urban setting that's sort of described in near low income areas, and so a lot of the inclusivity discussions been quite sort of thought provoking for that. It's stuff that I think we have been thinking about, but good to hear more and get more sort of thoughts on that, and something to refer to and point people to. So that's actually been I suppose a combination. It's just I feel so fortunate that we've just had loads of open doors. We've got the community council in Menstrie, which is where I live, and it's kind of the next door to Menstrie is where, well, basically kind of almost in Menstrie is where there's a really willing landowner who is just if not just open to trails, but it seems quite keen, and then the local council as well. So it's just really, and just sort of generally in the community, quite a. I mean, obviously there, it's not, there are kind of some obvious, some concerns and things, which is normal, but just it seems all really kind of. I mean, I don't want to jinx myself on a touch wood here, but it's definitely lots on this call's been been kind of resonating and really helpful stuff. So
cool. Thank you. Thanks, Roddy. Well, look, I'm not going to bring the call just to a close just yet, but maybe we will fairly soon, unless people have got people joined in this part of the conversation. So obviously, one of the things we sort of talked about beforehand was, if people got ideas for reframing next year. So while you will think about your ideas for that, I'll kick things off with one idea of my own, which I think what I'd really like to do is try and get as many as possible of the UK's mountain bike YouTubers along to Reframing, to have a discussion about. It needs to be a discussion. So I'm going to come at it from a very sort of teacher point of view, talking to naughty children, but that's what I want to talk to them about. Their sort of sense of responsibility and almost like trying to get them themselves to understand the issues, because I think quite often they don't understand them, which is why they behave in a way that perhaps trail associations don't want them to. But then I suppose once they've understood the issues, perhaps also to come up with some sort of voluntary code of conduct amongst themselves. For those of you on the Trail Hub, you'll have seen the other week one of the UK's top sort of mountain bike YouTubers, Jim from Pin TV, posted a couple of videos of very sensitive trails in the Surrey Hills. Now, I sort of bit the bullet and thought, well, what's the most productive, what's the most likely way I'm going to change his mind? It had to be about a friendly conversation, right? So I emailed him, asked to have a chat, had a chat with him, and he offered, halfway through that chat, he offered himself to take those videos down once he understood the issues associated with them. So I think, we just have to open those communication channels, I think, rather than rant about YouTubers from afar, actually have a conversation with them and help them understand the issues, and hope that they, as a result, change their behaviour. But I think it's quite likely. So that's one thing I'd like to do as part of Reframing, is to get as many of those guys along as possible and have a session with them. What do you think, Manon?
We did almost get GMBN along this year, and then I can't remember what they ended up doing in the end. But that's kind of the motivation, because it's always been a little bit last minute when we've got the dates out, just because of the nature of the organising committee. Again, all volunteer time. But so yes, we're planning to get the dates out soon and then put that in mountain bike media in general in their diaries. And I have said as well, I would like to get a younger demographic along as well, which probably is some of the YouTubers. Because yeah, a lot of the attendees that we've had along are people who are well established in the mountain bike sector, which makes sense. But yeah, there's some of like the younger athletes and influencers and people who can help to spread the word. It's definitely finding the hook and the way to get them in. I know, as you said, Kath also had some success on social media, opening a conversation with someone who had been, I suppose, aggressively riding their trails. And I think in the end, they went back and did some fixing of the trail that they'd maybe left in a worse state than when they got there. So yeah, I think there's finding the good ways, and that's why we want to talk to the media and industry, use their communication skills to reach more riders with the messages that we'd like to share. And definitely for reframing next year, I would like to get this kind of best practice for mountain biking, or how to, whatever the best way of getting that across is, in a way that kind of, gets the message home to riders, what they can do to help while out on the trails. And yes, Woodstock would be great to get along. Also, we almost got in the UK, and Ollie and Davey from the Ride Companion podcast, we sent out some emails a few weeks before, and there was interest, but then everyone was busy. So,
well, I'm thinking hopefully they'll, hopefully you'll be able to get those guys along if you give them more warning this time. But also, I did bump into John O'Jones. I think it was John O'Jones out of the two at Bike Park Wales the other week, and mentioned the idea to him, and mentioned reframing to him, and said would he be interested, and he pretended to be interested at least. So again, hopefully maybe he'll come along too. Dave, you got your question up? You got your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to chip in there and just say, I know that there's this kind of sort of social media movement / hashtag that's, I think, fairly old. I don't really follow it, so I'm not sure exactly how relevant it is still now, but it's like the no dig, no ride movement, which essentially kind of, at least from my previous understanding of it, tries to just sort of present itself and just sort of advocate to everyone and spread the news that, yeah, obviously if no one's digging, no one's riding bikes because there's no trails. And then just encouraging people to either go and dig with their local trail association, or if they can't do that, to go and support them in any way they can, whether it's, donating to give money, or just sharing the word, or turning up at a trash-free trails litter pick or something. I don't know. I just remember that as like a sort of hashtag that could be useful to throw in there along with the other social media stuff.
Yeah, we definitely did. That came up this year at Reframing. I think there's a bit of I suppose it depends how familiar you are with that. Quite a lot of the no dig, no ride comes, I think quite a few people have a connection to that from a dirt jumping scene. And for some people, it can sound a bit like if you don't dig, you can't ride. So I think there's definitely something in that, and it's maybe coming up with the message that's like give back in different ways, right? So we'd like more people to dig, and not everyone will, and not everyone can. So you can also support in all the other ways as well. So yeah, it's like finding that right message to get across. Yeah, exactly that. But I think there is, for some people, there's a bit of the, if you don't dig, you can't ride. That's all kind of.
Yeah, that's super fair. Like, you obviously, like, rightly, like, especially following on from the earlier, like, you don't want to kind of, I guess, as you pointed out earlier in the talk, Manon, like, you don't want to kind of, I guess, spread a message that might try to create inclusivity, but then as a result, it might do that on one side of the coin, but then on the flip side, you might scare away other people that could have been useful to have involved. So no, I get that. That's a very good point. It's, you want to try and pick the right message that's as inclusive as possible, right? So yeah, good point.
But yeah, it's definitely something we want to think about. Yeah, with collective heads in a room, come up with, collectively some good succinct message we can share.
Yeah. Ian, I'm going to put you on the spot now. He sits up. Turn me off. Right, come on. When was the first National Mountain Bike Conference that you organised and run?
When was the first one?
Yeah.
It was probably 2005 or 6.
You ran a series of National Mountain Bike Conferences when you were at the C2C, right?
Yeah. And
so
then
any learnings you could bring from that?
Yeah, I mean, they were all really interesting. The biggest one probably was the one we ran at the cycle show up at Earls Court, when we brought some speakers from across the world, really, across to give us a chat about their trail developments, to kind of get that moving and bring together Mike Van Abel and the guys from IMBA to the UK, so that we could get them out and show them a few of the trails. And yeah, just really, it's just been good getting, you know, like we are here, really getting mountain bikers together, sharing ideas, and then realizing that we're all kind of trying to deal with the same issues in a slightly unique scenario. So kind of that common practice. And like you said, Robin, with the Trail Hub there and these Monday evening meetings, they're a really good way of doing that. And then getting together at an events like Reframe and those conferences is another good way of sharing that best practice, and it just opens up that conversation a bit more, and people realize they can help each other with that. And I think for me, it's always been around not reinventing the wheel. I think like we are trying to do is that knowledge share just means that rather than thinking you're the only person with that issue, you can go on the hub or come to these meetings and go, hang on a minute, there's someone there that might have dealt with this, not necessarily directly the same, but has had an issue like this that they've had to sort out, and they might know how I can do it.
Cool. And then anything else on the conferences? I mean, like how many, why did they come to an end in them? What stopped them running? Was that just because you moved roles, or? Yeah,
Primarily because kind of sort of my role at IMBA came to an end, and then we just kind of putting those big conferences on started to get quite expensive. And when Developing Mountain Biking in Scotland came along and they started to run more of those conferences, that really started to kind of focus everything at what they were doing, rather than trying to run 2 in a year and not get the people along. We did quite a lot of work around the World MTB conference that was supposed to happen up in Scotland, but that never came off. And then, like I said, DMB and S just started to develop their momentum. And I think the original plan that was we'd try and do something in between. And so it would be a DMB and S and then an IMBA UK CTC kind of set up. But it just ended up that my role came to an end, and then those conferences finished as well. But you know, it's definitely something that I think it's great to get everyone together to talk about these things. They work really well in terms of the networking as well.
Cool, thanks, Ian. Well, look, has anyone got any ideas or suggestions for what could be what we could do at Reframing next year? Bridget is still on the call with a pen in her hand, taking notes. But if you haven't, I might bring the call to an end there.
Yeah. Just one thing I was going to say, Robin, quickly. I know Manon touched on it earlier, but I was wondering whether, obviously, there's a few of us here that run young rider development programs or things like that. I think it's a good idea to bring more of the young riders to something like Reframing. It's just trying to make sure that what they're coming to see is that relevance piece. And it may be that your idea around the YouTubers and the young people could be brought together to kind of get those young people to come along and listen to the YouTubers, but the YouTubers are there for us to talk to them about what they're doing as well. So it kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone, because I know if you say, do you want to come along and listen to a load of people talk about mountain biking, those kids might be like, what's that all about? But if you say you're going to have all of these YouTubers in the same room, they might be like, yeah, I'm there.
Yeah, although obviously there are different types of YouTubers. I mean, the ones I'm thinking are like 40-year-old dad, you know, that's their name on YouTube.
Yeah.
You know, do you know what I mean? Like the ones showing off you know, the locations of secret trails are not necessarily the ones that are shrouping, but you know, I suppose we want to reach both groups, but it might be, you know, the real superstars, it might be harder to get along. Do you see what I mean? But we'll see how it goes and go from there, maybe. Anyone else?
Sorry, if I could just come back to, if I could just come in on that that suggestion. So it's actually from my day job, something that we
we do a little bit is involve school pupils with some of the meetings that we hold, and basically just split the time. You know, it'll be, you know, not everybody attends the whole session. You know, you can say, you know, you're welcome to stay, but you know, there's 2 sessions, and they kind of have a common thread. Some people stay for both, but it may be that not everybody stays for all of it.
Yeah, so you have a morning targeted at the younger generation and an afternoon targeted at a different audience again. Yeah, that sort of makes sense. Cool. Well, look, in absence of any other suggestions or questions, I'm going to say thank you very much to all the Reframing guys for taking us through the learnings from the conference and talking about this year's conference. Thanks to Dom for talking to us about their trail clean campaign and Trash Free Trails in general. Thanks to Bridget for coming along and the rest of the Bride Bristol guys. And thank you to all for participating so well on the call. Sorry for putting you all on the spot individually, but you know, that's life, right? So yeah, cool. Thank you so much, and I'll see you all next month with hopefully an interesting session then. Thanks very much. Cheers, guys.